Hey everybody, Grommel's here, and today I got another Star Citizen video. I know it has been a while since the last Star Citizen video, but there is only so much you can show in the hangar module alone. But there is some great news. The alpha dogfight module of the game finally got released, so after months of waiting we finally get to fly and try a few of the ships. So I thought I'd just show you some footage from the game in PvE mode. I don't have access to PvP yet, and talk a bit about the game. Keep in mind of course that everything you see here is early alpha and subject to change. Also, the game is, as is usually the case with such early builds, not fully optimized yet, so you may see some low frame rates every now and then. Now, as you probably know, Star Citizen is an upcoming crowdfunded space sim, and eventually it will contain a large persistent multiplayer world with lots of different star systems where you can do all kinds of stuff, fight, trade or explore, a little bit like EVE Online but with smaller ships. There will even be a shooter part, you will be able to board ships for example, and there will also be a single player part of the game, in the style of the old Wing Commander games, called Squadron 42. The game, or parts of it, are getting released pretty early in their development to the backers, so that we can try out and test the game in early stages and give feedback and hopefully influence the development of the game in a positive way. The first part or module was released almost a year ago. It was called the Hangar module, and as the name suggests, it was only the player hangar. You could not fly in that one, but you could take a look at your ships and customize them a bit. Now the second module got released, the dogfight module, or as it is called now, Arena Commander. Here we finally get to fly and test the ships. This mode will of course be updated with updates and bug fixes, new features and ships over time. In the first release we get 3 pre-configured ships to test: the Anvil Aerospace Hornet fighter, which I'm flying here, the Origin 300i, another fighter, as well as the small RSI Aurora, which is a small multi-role ship. Currently you get those ships for free to test them, but you can't modify them yet. In later releases of the module you will be able to fly other ships as well and customize them. Eventually you will even be able to fly large multi-crew ships, so you can bring friends along on the same ship to man turrets for example. Now, the module is called Arena Commander for a reason. It is part of the in-game fiction, the lore. Within the game's story, this module is meant to be a future video game, a simulation, and the name Arena Commander is of course an homage to Wing Commander. So the idea is that your character enters the cockpit of the ship in the hangar and basically loads up this simulation or video game when you play the dogfight module. Arena Commander will even be part of the full game when it will be released. In the persistent universe, if you lose your ship, you will have to buy a new one, similar to EVE Online for example, so Arena Commander will still be in the main game to give players the opportunity to train and have for example dogfight tournaments, without having to risk the ship in quote-unquote reality. Well then, let's talk about how the game plays. I found the controls of the game to be quite interesting. One thing I have to say first though, at the moment you can't customize the controls yet. RSI said that they want to avoid anything that could destabilize this early build, so the controls can't be customized as of yet. Most of the standard settings work fine, but I would like to tweak the joystick axis, especially the yaw axis, because for my taste it has a far too huge death zone, and that has a negative influence on my aiming. So forgive me for not being too accurate yet. This will improve with practice and when I get to customize the controls and set the joystick axis properly, which I hope will be possible soon. Now let's talk about the controls. Now Star Citizen actually has a very complex physics built in the game, and the spacecraft move and maneuver around using a large amount of maneuvering thrusters. This is actually simulated, so maneuvering thrusters are not just visual gimmicks, the craft can't maneuver without them. So you for example want to roll left, you give the command via the joystick or whatever input device you use, and the computer gives the commands to the proper maneuvering thrusters to make the desired move happen. As a matter of fact, if you look at the left MFD, you can see that the thruster outputs are displayed on this screen. You can see how their output increases if you maneuver and is 0 when you just fly straight. That goes for the main thruster too, by the way. the fighters in-game have a speed limit for gameplay reasons, but they are still subject to physics, so once the speed limit is reached, the main thruster does not need to fire anymore until you change direction. The interesting thing here are the different flight modes you can use. Now, there are different modes for the flight control system, which is called IFCS, short for Intelligent Flight Control System. For example, there is G-Safe mode. Now, if I understand the lore correct, the ships in Star Citizen do have some kind of inertia dampening system, so your pilot can take more G than normal, but not unlimited. That means if you turn hard at high speed, you can black out. First, the vision gets blurry, and if you overdo it, you can black out completely and lose control of the ship until you regain consciousness. Now, the G-Safe mode prevents this from happening by limiting the movement of the craft if the G-load gets too high. This will of course limit your maneuverability, so every virtual fighter pilot will of course immediately turn this thing off. Now, when it is off, you can turn tighter, but you have to be careful, you can black out easily and lose control of your spacecraft. Even more interesting than the difference between G-Safe mode and not G-Safe mode is coupled and decoupled mode. Now, coupled is the standard flight mode. In this mode, the flight control system will control the thrusters in such a way to try to mimic the behavior of a plane in atmospheric flight. So the control feels very much like old space sims like Wing Commander or Free Space, for example. If you switch to decoupled mode, however, you have a more direct control over the thrust. The flight controls will only let the thrusters give you the thrust in the direction you choose. It won't try to fly like an airplane anymore. That means if you fly straight and switch to decouple, you can turn around while your ship is still flying in the original direction, thanks to inertia. In this mode you can also strafe to the sides or up and down. So if you have a fighter behind you, you can decouple, turn around and fire back while using the thrusters to strafe to the side to avoid incoming fire. On the HUD to the right of the crosshair you can see what modes are currently active, and if you keep an eye on it you can see how I turn decoupled on and off as the situation requires. Keep in mind though that I am of course new to this. I only played maybe 20 minutes when I recorded this, so I am no expert yet. Anyway, the controls in this game can actually become pretty complex, which is surprising. It did not look like that in the footage I've seen so far. But once you try it yourself and you really take a closer look at the different control modes, I think there's a lot of potential there, and I can't wait to see what you can do with this decouple mode once you're really good with it. I think Star Citizen may be just one of those games that really rewards learning the game properly and becoming really good at it, and that is something I enjoy a lot. If you of course just want to fly around as a trader, for example, and you're not interested in tight maneuvers, you can just keep all the helpers turned on and the control becomes pretty simple. But at the price of reduced maneuverability, of course. I think I will make a more in-depth video about the different modes in the future when I have more experience with it. But so far I like what I see. There seems to be quite a bit of complexity in this game with the controls and the system management, which is also something I will take a look at in another video. We don't get games like this often anymore these days. Well, let's talk quickly about the weapons. Now, the weapons, as you can see, are gimbal mounted, so they will try to get the lead for you. However, you need to aim directly at the target to get the fire solution, so you can't just have your crosshair wherever and expect to hit. There's a small circle around the fighter you have locked. If your crosshair is within that circle, it turns green and your guns have a fire solution. Now, if you would have told me that before I got to try the game, I would have not liked that very much. But so far I felt that keeping the crosshair on the target for the fire solution was challenging enough. This opinion may change though once we get customizable controls and I can set up my joystick the way I want. Now, to use the missiles, you first have to press the fire button for the missiles, so the missiles start targeting. If you keep the bipper on the target for long enough to get the lock, you can fire the missile. And there are of course countermeasures available. So that's a short overview over the weapons. Now, looking around when flying with a joystick is at the moment a bit problematic. I think you can only do it with the mouse at the moment. Track IR does not seem to work yet. which is a pity. I really dislike not having Track IR while in cockpit view. However, Track IR support was part of an early stretch goal, so I hope it will be introduced soon. That will improve the game a lot for me. Track IR itself already lists Star Citizen as a supported game, so I hope we don't have to wait too long for it. I hope you will also be able to control the crosshair with the Track IR as well, as currently you can only do that with the mouse, which is a problem with the joystick of course. You can't fly the craft with one hand and use the mouse to look around with the other one. That is something that will need some more testing though. And well, that is it for this quick look at the Arena Commander Dogfight module. Overall, I like it so far, especially the complexity in the control system was a pleasant surprise. I will make more videos about it when I have more experience with the game. Till then, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching and maybe I'll see you next time.